Let's talk about a watch I own that is unlike any other in my collection. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches, and another in my series of Why This Watch. I've got watches which are important to me. I've got watches which are beautiful. I've got watches which are super functional. I've got watches which I don't particularly like, but they fit into my collection in some way. Pretty much all of my watches I can explain intellectually. This watch I can't explain in any way, shape or form. It's really difficult for me. When I first looked at this, I actually started laughing, and that's probably why I bought it. This is my OSCO Diver. OSCO, an unnamed weird German brand from the 60s that I thought had died, but hasn't completely. A watch I was shocked it still ran. It was hilarious, and I just love the look of it. It is a silly piece of horology history from the late 60s, early 70s, but I love it. So let's get into it. So why have I got this weird OSCO Diver from sometime in the late 60s? Man, there's a story. Okay, so I stumbled upon this watch whilst just cruising through Chrono 24. I was actually looking at a dealer. I was looking at a dealer's inventory who I'd bought a couple of vintage Alpinas before, and I just kind of stumbled upon this. So I did some quick research to find out, well, who the hell is OSCO? What is this brand? And what I discovered is it's one of probably hundreds of brands from the late 60s, early 70s. This one in particular, the longer name is Otto Schlunden Co. And they're this obscure little German brand, like many brands from that era, that kind of had a go at dive watches, vanished for a little bit. Funnily enough, they do still exist. I thought they'd died completely, but they do exist still. Nothing I'm remotely interested in buying. But so why did I end up buying this watch? Well, frankly, it really stood out as a super fun watch. Just looking at the images, it just looked like fun, I suppose. That little bit of research I did told me that it's a real watch from a real watch brand, albeit a dead one. Well, almost dead brand. And to be blunt, it was super cheap. I thought it was like about 150 or 200 Australian bucks. So I was feeling kind of carefree at the time, not a lot of money, and I figured, what the hell, if it all goes wrong, hey, look, it's a conversation piece. Maybe I'll use it as a prop or something. When I got it, what I would say is, my first impression is the case and bezel could be best described as awful, I suppose. It captures all of the worst of those late 60s, early 70s mass-produced cheap-ass divers. It is cheap, and it wears its cheapness pretty close to the surface. It feels like that tinny plated brass that you get from like bargain basement toys. It's not, funnily enough. It is in fact steel, although I'm pretty sure the bezel is just some kind of cheap alloy. But somehow they've managed to make this steel look super cheap. So it doesn't get off to a great start. But then there's that dial with this really deep satin forest green, a dial color which, if it came out now in 2020, would be all the rage. They have nailed 50 years early the perfect dial color for a diver in 2020. And then on top of that, with all of everything else that's so cheap and nasty, these gorgeous applied indices and just two really fun Arabics, just the 9 and just the 12. I wish there was so much more, because that date is crap. That date is absolutely awful. One, it blows away an opportunity to have yet another really fun 3 at that point, and two, it just looks nasty. But you know what? I keep coming back. The thing that always gets me is that dial, that wonderful green fade to black sunbursty dial, and those two, there's only two really cool applied indices. There's just something magic about those two tiny little bits of this cheap and cheerful and fun vintage watch, and that's ultimately why it's mine. Yeah, so that's it. That's why I own an OSCO Diver. I can't be overly intellectual about this. It doesn't hit any particular high notes. It's just fun, and it makes me smile, and sometimes isn't that just enough?